Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Strange Britain Show. My name's Adrian Finney. I'm the regular host of the Strange Sheffield Ghost Tours. I'm the author of several books of the paranormal, and today I am your host with the ghosts. Today's episode is actually adapted and expanded from one of my favourite stories that I've ever researched, and it's in my book Britain's Haunted Roads. Shameless plug, you can get it on paperback, ebook and audiobook. We're going to begin by looking at the Tarmac report on haunted roads. It was commissioned by the company Tarmac, who make a lot of road materials, back in 2006. The study aimed to identify the most haunted roads in the whole of Britain based on sightings from drivers and various other things as well. The report highlighted numerous haunted roads up and down the country, including the A9 in the Highlands of Scotland, Platt Lane in Lee, Greater Manchester. Also found High Street and Suffield Road in Great Yarmouth for kind of a two-header haunted roads, but the most haunted of them all was, perhaps unbelievably, the M6 motorway. The study found out that a significant percentage of drivers, around 45% unbelievably, had experienced something weird whilst driving that they kind of put down to, was it possibly a ghost? Sightings range from just this vague feeling of unease, like perhaps something was watching them from just behind the hedgerows, to fully manifested ghostly apparitions. So in today's episode, we're going to have a look at one of those roads. We're going to look at the M6, Britain's most haunted motorway.
It turns out that there's been hundreds of sightings along the motorway's 230 miles length.
The section around Preston opened in 1959, becoming Britain's first section of motorway, and its full length opened in 1972 with the completion of Birmingham's infamous Spaghetti Junction. Given the length of the motorway and the amount of sightings, you could do a whole video series with all on its own. However, today I'm just going to look at some of the more interesting sightings. It was late 2009 when Adnan was heading along the M6 through Birmingham. A short distance in front of him, he spotted what looked to be a 1930s or 40s era pickup truck. He had a thing for old cars and trucks, but he didn't recognise the model of this one, and that surprised him. There was also something off about it. He couldn't quite put his finger on what that was, but something just, those alarm bells ringing in his head. His spidey sense was a-tingling. As it was a quiet night, he decided to increase his speed and to get a closer look at this old pickup truck. As he neared it, the first thing he noticed was the pickup truck wasn't quite reflecting the light of his headlights back at him right. It just looked off, and it helped deepen his sense of unease, but he couldn't quite explain it. As he looked closer though, and as he got nearer to the truck, he spotted something that really made the hairs on the back of his neck stand out. The truck didn't have a shadow. He tried to rationalise it away as a trick of the light. It had to be, didn't it? But he knew what he saw. As he pulled up alongside the pickup truck, he felt a chill to his very core. He could clearly see into the vintage vehicle, and it was clear that it had no driver. The wheel was moving, so it was obviously something was in control, but the thought of what that something was or might be, that made Adnan accelerate, and fast. He did not want to be near that old pickup truck for a second longer than he had to be. As he glanced into his rearview mirror, he witnessed something else that defied explanation. The old pickup simply faded out of existence, leaving only a faded glow where its headlights had been, and within seconds even that glow had gone. Adnan made a few tentative inquiries around and found that others had also seen that phantom vehicle along with a few others on that same stretch of motorway. He hoped that that would bring him a bit of comfort, knowing that he probably hadn't imagined it, but truthfully it raised far more questions for him than it did offer answers. Other phantom vehicles have also been seen along that section of the M6, and not all of them have been as benign in nature. In May 2007, Emma was heading back to her home in West Bromwich after a weekend away. She joined the M6 at Junction 1. It had been a really uneventful journey to that point. That was until she got to the outskirts of Coventry, as when she looked into her rearview mirror, she saw a large heavy goods vehicle approaching her from behind. She decided to change lanes, but to her surprise, the lorry changed with her, creeping ever closer, which was beginning to cause her some serious distress. Emma decided to add a little speed, so she pushed her car for all it was worth, but for some reason she couldn't get above 60 miles an hour, and this HGV was gaining on her by the second. Within minutes, it was right behind it. It was clear to Emma that it wanted to ram her off the road. She kept pushing her little car. She kept pushing it for all it was worth, but the truck was now with her, and it felt like it was just inches from her bumper, so she began to fear the worst. If it hit her, she knew it had to mean almost certain death. It made contact with her car, but against any rational logic and against the fundamental laws of physics and the universe, the HGV somehow phased straight through her car. As it did so, she felt static electricity making all of the hairs all over her body stand on end. She screamed, as let's be honest, if we were faced with the same situation, it's probably the only rational response to have. Within a few seconds, she was now looking at the tail lights of the HGV as it sped off into the distance. Her rational mind quickly took over and she looked for the vehicle's number plate or to see if it had any other noticeable or identifiable details, but sadly, she couldn't spot any. She was just deeply, deeply shaken by her encounter. All she could say for certain was that the truck looked old-fashioned. Emma was born around 1960 and it looked like trucks from when she was a kid. When researching that particular sighting, I found another curious sighting that I reckon might be linked. When I research a lot of ghost sightings, I go straight to the letters pages of local newspapers because that's often where people would write to if they had a weird encounter. So back in 1970, there was a HGV driver who was heading up that section of the M6 when he spotted an unusual car in front of him, one he described as futuristic. As he got closer, he thought he might have been lucky enough to spot a concept car out on a test drive from one of the nearby car factories. The car he was following though began to flicker. It was kind of there, not there, almost as if it was flickering in and out of existence itself. Could this have been Emma's car? And could she have witnessed this truck driver from 1970? Who knows? It's a curious thought, isn't it? Time slips, whilst relatively uncommon events, even in paranormal circles, are not unheard of. Most often they're reported by people who suddenly find themselves in a strange time or place, somehow witnessing historical events firsthand, whereas other times they're often a little bit more mundane. People might catch a glimpse, for example, of a shop that burned down decades ago. Where I am here in Sheffield, we have a phantom chip shop in a part of the city. People often see the chip shop, they smell the chip shop, they blink, and the chip shop is gone. So could this have been what was happening in this particular sighting? Could, by reasons as yet unknown, or possibly even unknowable, could a car from 2007 and a HGV from 1970 have somehow found themselves on the exact same stretch of motorway at the exact same second? It would seem that if this is the case, this could be the only time slip that I've ever found where we've got contemporary reports of it happening from both the time periods in question. If that is indeed the case, it opens up a whole universe of possibilities. The last sighting from the M6 that we're going to talk about today occurred on the section of the M6 toll near Lichfield. The M6 toll opened in 2003 to provide relief to the M6, as the section that was running through the West Midlands had become the most congested section of motorway, not just in England, not just in Britain, but in fact the whole of Europe. It's a curious fact that may or may not have influence on the motorway's hauntings. In the construction of the M6 toll, 2.5 million bucks were pulped and then mixed in with the tarmac. The reason given is that apparently doing this helped the road absorb water far better in wet weather conditions, leading to safer road for the drivers. Now, if these were 2.5 million bucks full of occult spells, maybe a Necronomicon, that have been pumped into the very road, we could, as some have suggested, have a theory as to what's going on, dark magic fused with the road itself. However, the vast majority of the books used were actually copies of Mills and Boon novels, so make of that fact what you will. In late 2019, Dave was headed northbound along the M6 toll around 2 a.m. He was driving a delivery truck for a national parcel company, he doesn't want us to know which one, and he was enjoying having the road to himself. There was a clear sky and all told it was a beautiful autumn evening. As he got to the section near Lichfield, he spotted what looked like 20 or so figures standing in the middle of the road ahead of him. Given that they were still some distance away and given he had the motorway pretty much to himself, he slowed down as he was ready to offer assistance. A motorway, after all, is not a place for pedestrians. As he got closer, he felt this chill run down his spine. There were indeed 20 men marching across the motorway in front of him, and they were all dressed as Roman soldiers. Two words sprang to his mind: stag do. It's got to have been a stag do. Maybe they'd been to a costume party and their bus had broke down. Within a second, however, all thoughts of this being a stranded stag do seemed senseless, as he knew he was looking at something altogether stranger. As he watched, he could see that they weren't actually walking atop the road surface as one might expect. Instead, they were somehow wading through the carriageway, as everything below their knees appeared to be somehow submerged in the tarmac as they waded their way across. This deeply unsettled Dave, so he decided to once again pick up speed. He was very happy to help fellow motorists in need, but he firmly drew the line at helping a group of ghostly Roman soldiers. There was something odd about how they looked, like they were not quite fully there. As he reached their position, now driving pretty much at a walking pace, the group of men faded away into a fine black mist which blew away on the breeze. Nothing had been left behind to suggest that there had ever been anyone or anything there. Like many who witnessed strange events, Dave was at a loss. He wanted to tell people what he saw, but he also feared ridicule. If his bosses found out he'd seen a Roman legion on the M6, would he be sacked? It's a real concern a lot of people have. Doing a tentative internet search, he found a tarmac report on Britain's most haunted roads, and knowing that it came from a company such as Tarmac gave him a little bit of reassurance when he found another sighting of the Roman legion within the very same report. A woman called Sue from Warwickshire told the survey of her account. She too had seen about 20 men which she described as Roman soldiers, but she said they looked, and I quote, more like upright shadows than men like you or I as they walked through the tarmac as you would water. That mention though of how it looked like they were moving through water struck a chord with Dave. When he read that, he knew in that second that he had not imagined it. Perhaps when it comes to the M6, a man called Tony Simmons, he was the man who compiled the tarmac report, he said it best. We assumed that Britain's spookiest road would turn out to be a dark lane near an ancient battlefield. But when you think about it, these findings make sense. The M6 is one of Britain's longest roads, and it goes through many counties and therefore an immense amount of history. It's clear that there's definitely something strange going along the length and the breadth of the M6 and the M6 toll. And what that is, we might never know. I've been Adrian Finney. I really want to thank you all for watching. You can find my books on Amazon and all good booksellers. Just put my name in, including Britain's Haunted Roads, from where this story was adapted from. You can also find tickets to my event, because I do the regular tours around Sheffield. And if you want to support me, come along to my events. That's the absolute best way to do that at strangebritain.eventbrite.com. Thank you for watching, and keep it spooky.